So throughout the years, as humanity has progressed, the term Christian has become used really just for anyone. People walk about, oh yeah, I'm Christian. Oh yeah, I believe in Christ. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean they act like it or they believe along what the Bible says. Not everyone who says they're Christian is actually a Christian according to their actions, and that is why James tells us that our faith needs works. But today we're going to be looking at some examples of some misinterpretations or just people who are saying false things about the Bible and who may claim to be Christian or religious, but their actions don't necessarily back it up. So first, we have a massive Quora post from I'm gonna manage to completely butcher this name. Shara, do you know how it's pronounced?
Pratyush Kumar Singh. I don't know.
All right, we're gonna say that's how it's pronounced. She's the NDA from National Defense Academy. Actually, it looks like NDA may actually be National Defense Academy. I don't know. But this was three
I
years
can't
ago,
tell.
and the question was, what is the most evil religion? And she answers Christianity. And then she posts off her reasons. The Bible was written by many different writers, and it's a collection of many religious scriptures. There's a very high possibility that the scripts of the Bible have been altered with. So, yes, usually with collections such as this, there is a high possibility that they have been altered with. However, we see hundreds of documents from only within 100 years of the original writing still represent the main text and represent the modern text. The we have it shows that it's not been altered doctrinally, doctrinally altered. Um, so so you've got that. We have hundreds of not manuscripts, but because manuscripts are the original copies, right? Or no, yeah, manuscripts,
I think so. Yeah, the
yeah,
like
manuscripts,
original
because they're not
prints of reference,
yeah, prints of
original
reference,
writings.
yeah. The manuscripts are copies in the same language, and we have hundreds, if not thousands, of those that all back up modern text. And you can say, okay, well, how do we know those aren't altered? Well, they were all found and dated for only like at the most 100 years after the original writing. So that's not a whole lot of time for alteration. And then you look at, okay, for Caesar's writings, okay, those are taught in schools. And we only have 10 manuscripts of those, if I'm remembering correctly. And all of those are thousands of years after the original writing. And we teach that in schools. And then she goes on to say, I'm assuming this is a she. I apologize if not. Probably would be a good idea to look into.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't say. I think there was like a profile picture. I didn't pay attention to it. Another thing I think I might want to add about the first point that they make was that like especially when in like the Middle Ages, if you were a scribe and you wanted to copy the Bible, you could be severely punished for any miswritings. Like if you made miswritings, you would have to scrap the entire thing, start all over. And if a Bible with like miswritings actually went into publication, you could be severely punished for that. So it was a very serious thing that was like no mistakes. You can't make any mistakes. And being a collection of several religious scriptures, no, not really. I mean, you have the New Testament, which is basically Christianity, and then you have the Old Testament, which is basically Judaism. So there's basically only two. And one is a continuation of the other, basically came out of the one, and it's just like Yeah. Unless you're looking at something like Mormonism or like some of those where they add extra texts that are not included in the canonical Bible. Yeah, it's basically just two different religions that are very connected, I would say. That's really all. It's not like several. It's not like you have pieces of this religion and this cult or whatever all thrown in together to form what is the Bible. No, it's basically been pretty consistent throughout its entire existence. So there's that. Just to throw that out there.
And I just, as I was looking for who this is, I didn't find anything, but there was another top post under this same question, and it answers the same thing, and it's, well, first off, there is a difference between Catholicism and Christianity,
Oh yeah,
but we're not going to get into that
they're
today.
pretty different.
But they were going on about how being gay is a sin. Well, different people, the attraction itself isn't the sin. I know people who are attracted to men and are Christians. Where it becomes a sin is when you follow through with that attraction. Because there are people who genuinely are attracted to different genders. But where it becomes the sin is when you go and follow through with it. We find that, in the Bible, in Leviticus, I can't quite remember the specific verse, but where it's listing out all the various punishments, it doesn't say if someone is a homosexual, stone him. It says if a man sleeps with another man, stone him, or if a woman sleeps with a woman, stone him. But yeah, so that was a little bit off of, that was not from Singh's post, but she goes on to talk about how there are many more violent verses in the Bible than in the Quran. Just because the media shows more about the Islamic terrorism doesn't mean that the Quran has more violent verses. Yes, but just because there are violent verses doesn't mean that the religion itself is violent, like Islam, like like the media shows.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you look at like Islam, it's really most of like the violent aspect of it boils down to a single sector of
It's
Islam.
not the religion as a whole, it's how people chose to interpret
No.
this.
And it's just a few extremists that
Yeah.
just they don't represent the entire population. I mean, you can look at like the Crusades too. Those are pretty big.
Yeah, the Crusades were again,
Yeah.
interpretation.
Yeah, the Crusades weren't that very biblical either.
She then progresses to pull.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. To
Oh no, you're fine.
to pull verses out of context. One of these being 1 Timothy 2:12, which reads, "I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man. She must be silent." The context. Excuse me. The context for that. I think this was the verse that we have down here. I could be wrong. Yeah, I am wrong. Hang on, let me pull up the context for that real quick. Let's see, we said 1 Timothy 2:12. The context for that says, "A woman must quietly receive instruction with either submissiveness, or with entire submissiveness. But I do not allow a woman to teach or to exercise authority over a man, but to remain quiet. For it was Adam who was first created, and then Eve. And it was not Adam who was deceived, but the woman was deceived, and became a wrongdoer. But women will be preserved through childbirth, if they continue in faith, love, and sanctity with moderation." So it's not saying that women can't teach or have authority. What this is representing, in my opinion, what it seems to me to be representing, is for women to not consider themselves higher or better than man, because of those things. It was Adam who was created first, and then Eve, and it was not Adam who was deceived, but Eve.
I mean, they were both deceived in the
Yeah,
end,
they were
but
both deceived.
someone was
But
first.
yeah.
Eve.
And then she also, on a similar topic, pulls out, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord, Ephesians 5:22. Again, out of context. Right after that, it goes on to say, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her. So basically saying, give yourselves up for your wives, so that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and blameless. So husbands ought also to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his own wife loves himself.
Yes, and it also kind of, it goes both ways. So this isn't, I've also seen some that are like saying, oh, well, what about this in the case of like domestic abuse or whatever? I like to kind of reference Esther for that because, was it Queen Vashti was her name?
Yeah, I think.
She was trying to be coaxed into doing something by the king, and she said nope, and she was kicked out of the palace for it. But
Yeah, I think that only stands true if, if it's held both ways.
yes, because it sounds like women submit to your husband sounds like a bad thing, but if you think about it, if you're receiving proper love and if you're giving proper respect, you're not really going to have an issue with that. In fact, you may want to do that just because it's a healthy relationship, a healthy relationship that supports both ends. And where one end doesn't meet the other, that's when you start having issues. So it works both ways, and it's not like something it's not suppressive, as a lot of people would like to think. And I think, yeah, that's just where people get it wrong. They're like, oh, it's permitting like suppression and whatever, or like domestic abuse. It's not. If there's also specific verses, I didn't do a horrible lot of research on this. I probably should have. That talk about more about like how husbands are to treat their wives and stuff about divorce as well.
I mean,
And like
Proverbs
when
31
divorce
is
is
all
permitted.
about the how amazing the righteous woman is, and Song of Solomon is basically a love story about a husband and wife.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I certainly don't think it's supposed to be condescending or suppressing. But the next verse that she pulls out, I don't want to focus too much on because I personally believe there's the chance that it could be figurative. And because there isn't a specific interpretation that we know to be true, we don't really want to say whether, whether it is or not, how it is or is not supposed to be interpreted. But
Yeah,
it's
because the passage she did pull was from Leviticus, and I did some research on Leviticus, and most of it is like instructions about the tabernacle and
I'm
for
talking
like
about the Psalm
orderly conduct.
137 passage.
Oh, sorry. She
But
did
yes,
pull
she
some
did
from
pull a lot
Leviticus,
from
though,
Leviticus, yes.
which are extremely difficult
And
to
under the old law, too.
understand, like the context for some of them. Yeah, sorry.
No,
Go
you're
on.
fine. So she pulls out Psalm 137:9. It's happy is he who repays you for what you have done to us, he who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks. Context for that is actually talking about Edom, which is actually a brother country to Israel. It rose from Esau, and Israel rose from Jacob. And so they're supposed to be, brothers. But Edom basically was not very kind to Israel at all and did a bunch of bad stuff, and including rising up against them and fighting them. So Psalm 137, 7 through 9, bringing in the context here, says, "Remember, O Lord, against the sons of Edom, the day of Jerusalem. He who said, raise it to its very foundation. O daughter of Babylon, you devastated one, how blessed will be the one who repays you with the recompense with which you have repaid us. How blessed will be the one who seizes and dashes your little ones against the rock. So it's saying, hey, they did this to us. Bless the one who, teaches them the lesson, basically.
Which is morbid, but
Yeah.
this is like
Yeah.
the Old Testament, so Jesus has not come yet. So a lot of things in the Old Testament are more violent.
Yeah.
Uh,
Then she pulls out
partially
stuff.
because judgment back then was much different. Judgment basically changed quite drastically after Jesus came, because a lot of this literal violent judgment was not needed anymore. Now, of course, there's the context of like everyone's going to be judged in the end times, but that's more of like after you're dead, whereas
Yeah.
the Old Testament was like, we'll make you dead.
Yeah. The Old Testament was current punishment and spiritual punishment. But
Yep.
she goes on to pull out stuff with slaves and masters, which before we even get
And
into
this is an interesting one.
yeah, slavery was entirely different in the days of the Roman Empire than it is today. In terms of abusiveness and roughness, it wasn't much different. However, it was based on victory rather than race. The slavery that we think of when we consider slavery is the slavery in the United States before the Civil Rights Act, and that was based solely on race. If you were African American, chances were you were a slave, and so it's and it's entirely you're stuck, but
Yeah.
in the Roman civilization, it was based on victory. If you lost, you lost a war to the Romans, you were going to be slaves. If you got your ship pirated, you were going to be slaves. All right, you can't live by yourself because you lost to us, so you're going to live under us. Not that the abusiveness should have been accepted, but anyway, the first pulls out is 1 Peter 2:18, and that is, slaves, submit to your masters with all respect, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the cruel. Well, we can also pull out Colossians 4:1, which says, masters, treat your slaves justly and fairly, knowing that you also have a master in heaven. And Exodus 21:16, whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of him shall be put to death.
Yeah, so basically when I've seen people that are like, oh, well, these verses mean that the Bible permits slavery. Not really. It's a how do you behave in a godly manner despite the circumstances?
Exactly.
Because you could also be an absolutely terrible slave. And I mean, look at like Joseph. How he was sold into slavery. He could have been the most resentful, like, just terrible person ever. And he rose to be the head of the household.
Yeah, instead
head over all the slaves.
He respected his master, didn't sleep with his master's wife, and even though he was thrown in jail, he still rose
because Potiphar's wife was a butt.
Yeah.
Divorce her. Divorce.
Eventually rose to be the basically second in command over all of Egypt.
Yeah, so he's held some honorable positions because of his good godly conduct.
Yeah. She pulls out several more verses, and the rest of these are all from the Old Testament, which are the old law. Aren't required to stand by these, but well, okay, there's some of them that are common sense to stand by, but
Yeah.
Deuteronomy 25:11-12. If two men fight together and the wife of one draws near to rescue her husband from the hand of the one attacking him, and puts out her hand and seizes him by the genitals, then you shall cut off her hand. Your eye shall not pity her. Well, okay, you compare it to this. Okay, if my wife is fighting with another woman and I come forward to protect my wife and do a similar thing, I'm being put in jail, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very, very similar situation with, okay, you don't take advantage of that one, like it sounds like she would have been if they were fighting. But two, it's, it's private, and it's, you know yeah, anyway, we're not going to get too much farther into this topic.
Yeah,
But
I'm just wondering because that's like a very strange passage. Just like I know
yeah,
rules are put in place for a reason, but how often of an occurrence was
yeah,
this?
how often did this occur? Goodness. um
It's really weird.
the next two are from Leviticus. One of them is Leviticus 21:18-19. For any man who has a defect shall not approach, a man blind or lame who has a marred face or any limb too long, a man who has a broken foot or broken hand, or is a hunchback or a dwarf, or a man who has a defect in his eye, or eczema or scab, or is a eunuch.
And like this isn't like, and this is referring to like old laws and how you were supposed to
The temple.
keep purity around the temple. Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you should stay away with people from defects. If you look at the New
Yeah.
Testament, Jesus helped people who were lame. He helped people who were blind. He was there to help
too.
people, who had illnesses and stuff who that may have been considered unclean in these times. And also
Yeah.
Leviticus, if you look at like the historical context, a lot of these things, like what was categorized as unclean, was a kind of a cultural thing for like that time period, and was seen historically in like other cultures other than just the Hebrew. So it's also like cultural as well as like just associated with the time period, and it is old law, so not a whole lot of it is relevant because obviously this isn't a situation we would normally have today, referencing to like the last passage. And some of the other things just...
Yeah, well, and like, you've got... It's not saying that they are any less pure than any other human.
No. They're still
because
humans.
you think, okay, even the priests, the people who are supposed to be holiest, and the high priest, they still had to cleanse themselves before entering the temple.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of them still got punished for it.
Yeah.
2 of Aaron's sons died because they weren't keeping laws in the tabernacle.
And then another one from Leviticus 29. For everyone who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. He has cursed his father or his mother. His blood shall be upon him. Again, old law. But you think these people are raising you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're disrespecting them or cursing them, or, they're trying to help you, and you're doing that.
Yeah, I think this is also one of those things that goes both ways. If you have a dysfunctional relationship, this is more likely to come out. Dysfunction is always going to come as a result of sin in some form.
Yeah.
Whether it's one side or the other. But in the case where your parents are treating you with love and they're trying to care for you and they're trying to discipline you, you have no reason. You have no reason to disrespect them in this way. And I think there's a lot of cultural relevancy to like this today with like kids and stuff that just hate authority, hate their parents for no other reason than because they want to do what they want to do. And so they end up being really, really poor citizens.
Yeah.
And they're just terrible to everyone.
Let's go, Gen Z. Woohoo. No.
Or anyone. Woo. Yeah.
Now this intrigued me because she goes on to say exactly, and I quote, "Few reasons why Christianity is stupid." And then she goes on to say they believe that the earth is flat. Please tell me where you find that belief that all Christians believe that the earth is flat.
Yes, I have seen a few Christians that believe the earth is flat, which is kind of dumb considering it was Christian scientists who discovered a lot of things about the earth, like that the earth and the planets revolved around the sun, stuff like that. So a lot of these are like Christian discoveries, and I have seen a few Christians that believe the earth is flat. But I don't understand it because nowhere in the Bible does it say that the Earth is flat. In fact, if I'm correct, most of the Bible was written before it was even discovered that the Earth was round. So
Yeah.
this wasn't a scientific concern for
Yeah,
anyone.
it wasn't even,
Um,
yeah.
so it's not like mentioned or anything. And I mean, you can look at like stuff where like they like what was it about the day? Like they stopped the day, and
I
that's
think
just
that was
the Earth
in,
no longer rotates on its
I
axis,
feel like that was in
and it's
Ecclesiastes
stagnant in
14.
the universe. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean the sun somehow has to be floating above the Earth.
Well, and even then you think the sun never moves. Um, but
Yeah, the sun never moves. It's only the Earth. So,
um, and then
but
her
it's just
next
interesting.
point,
Yeah,
her next
I have
point,
seen questions.
I'll really talk
Sorry.
about a lot on her next point. I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Oh, oh, you're fine.
Um,
No, I did a ton of research on the second point because
yeah.
this is interesting. Um,
Oh, you're thinking the
there's
third point you did
definitely.
a bunch of research on. I can see.
Oh yeah, the second and third point I did quite
Yeah.
a bit. Well, the
So
second I did most of my research today. So that's how that is.
the
Um,
the second point says deny evolution by ignorance, and their only reason being it's in the Bible. I'll let you talk about
which is
that some, and
blatantly
then I'll
false.
fill in the blanks.
Yeah, there's a lot of Christians that have done some significant research on like evolution and carbon dating and all that stuff, and they come to the conclusion on their own that they don't believe in it. So it's not by ignorance. Sure, there are a lot of Christians that, they're not scientists. So they go, isn't the Bible? It must be false. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of Christians as well that make logical conclusions based on what they believe. And I think it's kind of interesting in general because, like, what Christians believe in regards to evolution differs significantly. So you
Yeah.
have young Earth creationists, you have old Earth creationists, you have creationists that believe some aspects of evolution. Um,
You have people
like,
that believe God uses evolution or works in
yes,
evolution.
you have people that wonder about, like, oh, the 7 days at the beginning in Genesis. Was that
And that's
over?
getting into the third topic.
So, sorry. Well, it does kind of relate to the second
Yeah, it
topic.
does. It does.
Whether the Earth is like really old or short, or like how things evolved or whatever. Um, so there's just like a lot of differing views, and science changes and evolves on its own over time as well. Just like as new things are discovered, or as things are proven false, or as new evidence is found. Um, and just with the debate over evolution and creationism in general, I see a lot of people pointing fingers, oh, this side's so stupid, or this side's so stupid. I just think the arguments and stuff is dumb.
Yeah, in the
Because,
end, how much does it matter?
yeah, like, how is how the earth began going to affect how you live right now? Most likely not. So
Yeah.
it's not something that I pay a lot of attention to. I think it's pretty dumb to argue about. I know that's something that genuinely intrigues a lot of people, but there's just so many different beliefs. There's so many different things. There's so many different ways to interpret evidence. You can argue there's holes in evolution. You can argue that there's no evidence against evolution. Um, I think evolution focuses more on like a scientific base, whereas biblical creationism, stuff like that, bases itself more in like archaeology and stuff, because there are a lot of things that you cannot prove with the scientific method,
Oh
that you
yeah.
cannot, that you just like, that's kind of pseudoscience, stuff like that.
I mean, you've
But
got first thing that I want to pull out with this is, and I think this is where Shara was headed, is evolution isn't a law. It is not considered a scientific law. They don't say the law of evolution. They say the theory of evolution. And
which
that is
means it's
because,
a possible explanation for how the Earth began based on
yes,
evidence that is provided.
it does not mean it is known for a fact. It means it cannot be tested enough or has not been tested enough to determine whether or not it is true and actually happens. Therefore, there's nothing wrong with denying it. But there's also nothing don't treat it like a law when it's not a law. And unfortunately, science and schools have been treating it like a law. But
yeah, at this point, it's a possible explanation that has significant stuff to back it up and whatever. But at the end of the day, I think it all boils down to what is your worldview? How are you interpreting this information? Yeah, there's a lot of inconsistencies, I think, in both. Because there's stuff you can prove and just stuff you can't, obviously. If you believe humans haven't always existed and that the Earth is trillions of years old, there's going to be tons and tons and tons of things that you cannot test. You can do basically nothing with. And I've also seen stuff on like evolutionists that are like, oh, Christians don't believe that or like life can generate from nothing because it hasn't been done. I think it can be done. I think there's tons of stuff that science can do. People have already been trying to figure out how do you create life in a lab, and I think it can be done. But just because it can be done and it can happen in a lab environment doesn't mean it's
doesn't
in
mean it should.
nature. Yeah.
I mean,
Or that it can
I
happen in
can,
nature. Like
yeah.
we
I,
build skyscrapers. Is a skyscraper ever gonna like just generate itself in nature? No.
yeah,
And
I
even if
can,
you create life in a lab, if that supposedly took millions of years to develop, who's to know whether it could actually occur in nature or
yeah.
not? Because there's too many variables that you just can't make connections with.
And in terms of science making things possible, yeah, science has made a lot of things possible that shouldn't necessarily be possible. You know, I can, let's say I go out and I can kill 5 people and make it, and science has made it possible for me to completely atomize, completely or relatively speaking, theoretically speaking, completely hide all pieces of evidence. I shouldn't have said atomize. Hide all evidence and it never be found. But that doesn't mean that I should.
No, no, no.
You
But I
know,
think
you,
when it comes to like evolution and morality and stuff like that, you can excuse stuff like that under evolution as or like in like atheism and stuff that you cannot do under Christianity and other religions. Like you could atomize a million people. You could be Hitler, but 10 times worse. And you know what? You could say, well, this is just the way that I think,
oh
and
yeah, in today's
see
society,
nothing wrong with
unfortunately.
yourself. And that's kind of the ideology that a lot of serial killers have, but a lot of them are not religious because they would be put under moral like restrictions that they can completely dismiss under a lot of these other things because they say, oh, morals are just the results of societal bounds, culture as it has developed throughout the years, blah 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 blah. So there, yeah,
Yeah. Anyway, we should probably move on to our third topic.
probably.
She says they believe that the Earth is less than 10,000 years old. So
Not
so
all
for
Christians believe the Earth is 10,000 years
yeah,
old.
for this, I mean, you think, okay, that estimate of it being less than 10,000 years old is basing off of biblical genealogies. However, some genealogies don't give the ages, and some of them may overlap. You've got you've got so many possibilities. I got to go here soon, so we really got to crack down.
Oh dear.
Um,
I'm sorry.
but no, it's fine. I didn't think I was gonna have to go here soon, but I do. So sorry. um, but yeah, actually, there are quite a few Christians that have gone through and put in the studies and say, okay, whereas the uh, theory that it's millions upon millions upon millions of years old may not be true. Again, theory. Um, it definitely is likely more than 10,000 years old. And then lastly, she says, and also a talking donkey. Yeah, and the conversation between the donkey and man is hilarious. Um, so when you say talking donkey, it makes it sound like you mean like the donkey from Shrek that talks all the time.
Yeah, they're thinking of it in like scientific terms.
Donkey?
Donkeys don't talk.
Yeah,
Snakes don't talk.
but
But if you look at like,
this is miraculous. This is
yes,
God performing a miracle, making a donkey speak in one particular scenario. You
yeah,
mentioned up there the Quran. the Quran has miracles just the same.
Mhm.
So just because there is a talking donkey doesn't mean anything. It's just the way that God chose to speak to him.
Mhm.
Um,
Because the person in the story was not listening,
yeah,
and so they made a donkey talk. And I
Balaam.
mean, yeah, it's a miracle. Again, it's something that's not consistent. Not all donkeys talk.
Yeah,
It's not consistent
only a
by
few
any
do. No, I'm
means.
kidding.
It's just something that it was a one-time event to teach a lesson to the person being spoken to. And again, with the talking snake, um, Lucifer, Satan, made himself in the form of a snake. So, reality, it's not actually a snake that was talking. It was an angel that was talking. Um, so there's that. It wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah,
I wonder what snakes would have looked like with actual legs though before they were made
yeah.
to like move around on their bellies.
She concludes by saying, "There are many other verses I would love to add here, but I guess I've made my point." I'm going to conclude by saying I would double check and make sure you have made your point, because you really pulled some verses out of context there, and I can do the same thing with the Quran. Um, so yeah, I hope this has been helpful to anybody who has read this post.
Wait. No, aren't we gonna like do the other one?
Oh, you want to do the other one? Okay, yeah. So
Yes.
there
So
was another
basically,
situation. I'll let you
yes.
describe this while I go get ready real quick.
Okay, so basically, most of this lady's comment above comes from a misunderstanding of the Bible. And whether this is her own research, I mean, obviously part of it is, but it's also because the beliefs in Christianity vary so much. You can have people that believe in aspects that are figurative, while people will take those same passages and believe that they are literal. And that's where you have a lot of different denominations. You have a lot of different beliefs when it comes to the Bible. Some denominations add extra books, some do not. I personally just believe in the canonical books of the Bible because they don't contradict each other. They're the most accurate they have in terms of like they were like created like less than 100 years after Christ's death by potential witnesses, by the apostles themselves. Um, they agree with the Old Testament, stuff like that. Um, but like some of these beliefs stem from other Christians that don't believe things that are very biblical. And again, with like the people that believe that the Earth is flat, there are Christians that believe the Earth is flat. There are Christians that believe that vaccines are wrong, and like other forms of technology are wrong because they are man-made creations, despite the fact that this is knowledge that we that God has given us. We were created in God's image, so we have the knowledge to create things that is in human nature, to create things and adapt to our surroundings, and to try and make life easier for us in a very broken world. And so you just have a lot of people like that, or that people that believe some of the inconsistencies that this lady had in her arguments. I've seen Christians that are really like, oh yeah, you don't need to believe all of what the Bible says because it permits slavery, or like, yeah, most Christians don't believe this because of this reason, or a lot of Christians that um, kind of take the whole women's rights thing with like the passages that we talked about in relation to how wives should act. So there's a lot of just different stuff, and then of course you have people like Westboro Baptist Church that are really anti homosexual to the point that like they don't practice what they preach in terms of Christianity, where you have um, they preach like a message of hate, that God hates people like blank. or
Christians
stuff
aren't
like that.
called to hate anyone, and that's the
No,
thing.
no, 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 no.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not. You're not supposed to judge others in the sense that, like, you can disagree with them, but
Yeah.
you're not supposed to treat
You
them
can you
like
can
crap.
you can disagree with them and still love them the same as other people. You
Yes.
can love them the same as other people and not support them. And
Mm-hmm.
earlier when I was mentioning those people, I'm actually glad that you came back around to this because I wanted to bring this up again. When I was mentioning those people that I know that are attracted to the same gender, they they have stayed single their whole lives because they know it is a sin, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't want that. Um,
And
then
I,
also
I,
going back to the evolution for a split second because I've really got to get going, but
sorry.
no, you're fine. Um, uh, the evolution says that over time mutations have occurred that cause DNA to change and people to become the way we are. Well, okay, first off, mutations, of all the mutations they've practiced in the lab, none of them, or very little of them, have proven to actually be beneficial to the organism.
Mm-hmm.
Also, in fact, most of them are taxing or have no effect whatsoever. Also, DNA is shown to be breaking down, not rebuilding.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that too. But yeah, I hope this is helpful to anyone listening to it and just getting some of both sides of the argument rather than one taking things out of context. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we will see you guys next time.